was a half acre of smoke, and then 10 minutes later, it was 20 acres of smoke.
Nick Libonati and his sister were the first to report the Palisades fire on Tuesday, January 7th.
Got my hose out to go spray out the backyard. There's a lot of brush out there, and I knew it was coming for us when the hose was just spraying right back into my face.
After evacuating with neighbors, 21-year-old Libonati came back to the neighborhood, known as the Highlands, to put out small fires with just a shovel and a bucket. With him, his friend Henry Holloway also helps after losing his home in the fire.
Can't really stand by. The only thing to do is move forward and help others keep what they have currently.
This duo says they came back to the neighborhood because they felt it was the right thing to do.
We're blessed enough to still have somewhat of a house, and just doing what I think's right.
The Los Angeles Fire Department, along with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, are in the neighborhood for cleanup and remain on alert as fires burn in nearby canyons. Security teams are also on patrol to prevent looters.
The devastation in this neighborhood in Pacific Palisades is obvious. You can see scorched vehicles, homes left in ruin. This all happening while the LAFD fire chief is critical of the city, saying the city failed her department by slashing their budget by $17 million. She says they simply don't have enough firefighters to fight all of these wildfires.
The multiple wildfires in Los Angeles continue to cause devastating damage to homes, leaving residents in shock.
Doesn't look real. Everything you've ever known is just gone.
It's so surreal. You can't describe how bad it is. The pictures and the news just don't do it justice. It's so bad, and just my heart goes out to everyone, and it's just brutal.
According to the Los Angeles County Assessor, the fires have wiped out over 10,000 structures and at least 180,000 people were ordered to evacuate. President Joe Biden, along with the Vice President Kamala Harris, hosted a California wildfire briefing.
We're going to keep working 24/7 to support state and local officials to fully stop these fires as soon as possible.
This is Analia Vey with GSUTV.
President Trump has been quick to try and fulfill his campaign promises of terrorizing immigrant communities and deporting as many people as he can following a slew of raids being conducted by immigration and customs enforcement officers that are taking place all over the country. Despite the barrage of executive orders and police activity, many in the United States are still looking out for the well-being of their undocumented neighbors. Raids began taking place in cities all over the U.S. following the inauguration on January 20th, and in the first week, over 1,000 people were arrested under the suspicion that they might be here illegally. Many of those arrested, however, were not only legal citizens, but also had no criminal record whatsoever, with only 52% of the arrests in that time being criminal arrests. At least 15 indigenous people from New Mexico and Arizona were also detained in ICE raids. So far, raids have taken place in New York City, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Miami, and Atlanta, with more planned for the following weeks. A raid on the city of Aurora, Colorado was planned for January 30th, but was postponed after leaked plans of the raid were reported and met with public outcry. Despite being a sanctuary city, Chicago, along with other sanctuary cities, were still subject to ICE presence and raids, but local law enforcement, such as the Chicago Police Department, are prohibited from assisting federal immigration agents due to their sanctuary status. On top of the raids ordered by Trump, multiple pieces of legislation and 21 executive orders have been signed in regards to immigration enforcement, including actions currently being taken by the president to circumvent and repeal the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment grants birthright citizenship to anyone born in the United States, regardless of their parents' citizenship. This administration also rolled back a rule that prohibited ICE agents from making arrests at sensitive locations, such as schools, houses of worship, and hospitals. In spite of the immigration crackdown, communities across the nation are coming together to protect their neighbors from unjust persecution, while some are issuing lawsuits against the president to challenge some of the more unconstitutional orders. Many school districts across the nation, including Chicago Public Schools, have released statements regarding their intent to protect their undocumented students and refuse to share information with ICE agents regarding students. The ACLU also filed a suit against Trump challenging his repeal of birthright citizenship before the end of his first day back in the Oval Office. Finally, Citizens, both documented and undocumented, are encouraged to know and exercise their rights. Here are a few things you can do to keep you and your family safe in situations involving ICE agents. If you are approached by ICE officers while you are at your home, you have the right to refuse them entry, and you do not have to leave your home or open your door. Federal immigration agents are not allowed to enter your home without a judicial warrant. Administrative warrants from ICE or the Department of Homeland Security are not sufficient to grant agents access to your house, so make sure any warrants being served are signed by a judge. Businesses and other public buildings, such as schools and churches, can also turn away ICE agents if they do not have the appropriate warrants. Every person in the United States also has the right to remain silent as granted by the Fifth Amendment. If an officer or other agent of the law tries to question you, you can let them know that you wish to remain silent and you do not have to answer any further questions. Finally, if you are detained, you are encouraged to remain silent, seek or ask for a lawyer, and do not sign anything you do not understand or without legal counsel. For GSUTV, this is Graham Taylor.
It was here in Plains, Georgia, surrounded by family and friends, where Jimmy Carter passed.
He was someone that everybody in the community always looked up to, somebody that always brought positivity, and somebody that was spiritually strong. And this is somebody from worldwide that we're going to miss.
In Plains, Georgia, President Jimmy Carter was revered.
You know, he's always the president of the United States, and he has earned and deserves that respect, but to most of us, he was Mr. Jimmy.
And let's face it, the Carters will always be alive in Plains, so we want to continue the spirit and continue the good in the world.
To go all over the world, and he could have chosen to live anywhere, but he comes back home.
People here in Plains, Georgia were eager to talk about their friend Jimmy, because that's what the former president was to them, a friend, much more than the 39th president of the United States. This was his home. This is where his love affair with Rosalind Carter began, and this is also where he will be laid to rest beside her.
Yesterday, President Carter's wish came true. He's with Rosalind again, and since she left us a little over a year ago, that's been his wish. So it's very bittersweet. You know, the selfish part of me wanted him to just live on forever, but we're going to have to get used to a world without Jimmy Carter, and that's going to be very difficult to do.
President Carter has been an international influence, but some of his greatest influence, he and Mrs. Carter's, has been right here in Plains, Georgia.
From Georgia peanut farmer to president, Jimmy Carter's legacy spans 100 years. Leaders around the world remembering his remarkable life.
Jill and I lost a dear friend. What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, is that millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well.
Many leave flowers and notes outside of the Carter Presidential Center.
But it was his life post-presidency that laid the bricks for his legacy. He is remembered as a passionate humanitarian and a pioneer of human rights. For decades, Carter attended and served as a Sunday school teacher at Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains. On Monday, dozens of residents attended a vigil to commemorate his life.
On New Year's Eve, just days after the former president's passing, Jason Carter spoke about the man he knew as his grandfather.
Well, I mean, my grandfather is remarkable in a lot of ways, and one of them is that he has spent almost 2 years in hospice, and that time for him and for all of us has been a time of reflection. And so we've been looking at this, and we weren't sure when the day would come, but the fact that it's here and that we're talking about it on New Year's Eve is a great way to reflect back on this remarkable legacy and to look to the future as well.
We are learning more about the former president's travel arrangements. He will leave here on Saturday for Atlanta, where he will lie in repose at the Carter Center before heading to Washington, D.C. on Tuesday to lie in state at the U.S. Capitol. Then on Thursday, January 9th, National Day of Mourning, will be the state funeral at the Washington National Cathedral before he heads back here to be laid to rest.
This is Analia Vey with GSUTV.
You know, for the final time as president, I have the privilege bestowing the Presidential Citizens Medal, one of our nation's highest honors, on an extraordinary, and I mean an extraordinary group of Americans.
January 2nd, 2025, President Joe Biden awarded Presidential Citizens Medals to 20 recipients. This honorary ceremony occurred just weeks before he leaves office. The Presidential Citizens Medal is awarded to citizens who perform exemplary deeds in service to their country and/or fellow citizens of the United States of America.
You know, it's been said before, the most important title in America is not president, but citizen. It's we the people. These are the words of the rock upon which this entire nation has been built.
Established in 1969, the Presidential Citizens Medal is recognized as the second highest civilian award from the U.S. government.
It's fitting that we gather here in the East Room next to the portrait of Teddy Roosevelt, a reformer, a soldier, a governor, a president. He promoted the cause of active citizenship. Despite his rugged individualism, he believed in forging common ground.
President Biden named 20 recipients of this award, including Bill Bradley, Frank K. Butler Jr., Diane Carlson Evans, Benny G. Thompson, and more. Another memorable moment from the night was when Biden also awarded former Representative Liz Cheney. This is Analia Vey reporting for GSUTV. Ahead of leaving office, Kamala Harris signed the ceremonial vice president's desk. On January 16, 2025, Harris signed the drawer of the desk at the White House during a ceremony that acknowledged her accomplishments in office. Harris recognized that although she was the one signing the desk, no accomplishments could have been completed without her team of dedicated public servants beside her.
And as you all have heard me say many times, I am fully aware that I am the public face of a lot of our work. And so I have the benefit of running into people all over our country who thank me. And I will tell you, I am fully aware that when they are thanking me, they are thanking our team for the extraordinary commitment that you each have and as a team have.
The drawer Harris signed is in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building and has been signed by every vice president since the 1960s, starting with Lloyd B. Johnson. Before signing the drawer, Harris briefly expressed her pride for the people she worked with for the past several years.
But I will tell you that everyone here has so much to be proud of. And our work is not done. And as you all know me, because we have spent long hours, long days, and months and years together, it is not my nature to go quietly into the night.
According to the White House, President Theodore Roosevelt was the first to use the desk in 1902. Now, Harris marks herself in history as the first woman to sign this commemorated desk. This is Analia Vey with GSUTV. Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced that Meta will stop working with third-party fact-checking organizations.
The fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created.
Zuckerberg said he will be working with President Trump to push back on all efforts pushing for more censorship. The company's new moderation policies will leave users responsible to flag inaccurate content. Independent professionals that work to stop the spread of misinformation will soon be replaced by public discretion.
The consequences of these suggested changes could be devastating.
Meta began using fact-checkers after the 2016 U.S. presidential election, when there was a rise in false claims on Facebook and other social media platforms. After the 2020 election, there was a great amount of backlash in which conservatives considered fact-checking and moderations as a censorship. Zuckerberg expressed that his views on content moderation has changed and stated that Meta made many mistakes when initially applying content policies and recognizes Trump's second term as a cultural tipping point towards restoring free expression.
He feels that the trade-off of having the fact check versus the bias of the fact checkers is a problem for him. So he's pulling back on that and handing it back over to the public.
Research shows that in the past, Republicans have spread more false claims, with one study finding that far-right sources known for spreading misinformation significantly outperform truthful sources.
If we look at Twitter, now X, we see chaos. We see a rise in misinformation as evident in scientific studies.
With that said, data to definitively prove bias on media platforms is not available to researchers. This is Annalia Vey with GSUTV. Storms near Houston, Texas brought several tornadoes that damaged family homes and one historic family farm. Reed Stronado helps run the farm that has been in his family for 80 years.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I've never seen a tornado, and just hurricanes is all we really get down here.
The massive tornado that touched down on his land destroyed one of the family's barns in its path, sending debris flying. The tornado then took a wall of one barn, the roof off another, and moved a boat that was stored inside.
It went between probably this front barn and our back barn, right in the middle of them.
The family said they found pieces of sheet metal and wood in their cornfields hundreds of yards away. A minimum of 6 confirmed tornadoes touched down in multiple counties southwest of Houston. Many homes were damaged, and now families find themselves in cleanup and recovery mode.
I was shocked. I was like, no words. Nothing ever like that happens in this area.
One house in Harris County seemed to take most of the damage on their entire street. Brick fell down and parts of their roof were left open and exposed. Luckily, no one was severely injured.
We were literally just on the floor just trying to take cover just in case anything was going to come in through the windows, but it all felt like 3 to 5 minutes, and then to find out all this happened in 3 to 5 minutes was kind of crazy.
This is Annalia Vey reporting for GSUTV. At the Wildfires Advocacy Center in Washington State, 20 big cats died from a bird flu that has been on the rise. This is over half of the sanctuary's population. Sanctuary owner Mark Matthews told CNN that their first cat got sick on November 22, 2024. The cougar stopped eating and died the next day. A day later, an African caracal also got sick and died.
We thought we were doing everything we could to avoid anything like this from happening. The cats are pretty well split up into 30 by 40 foot habitats.
The 20 animals that died were part of the worldwide wildcat conservation efforts, including a Bengal tiger, lynxes, bobcats, and more.
Tabby the tiger was a very fun, loving tiger. She had a super personality. Every time I came up, she'd come running to meet me.
Workers at Wildfires are grieving the loss of these animals and trying to understand the unexpected illness.
Feeling devastated, kind of in shock, and just taking really good care of those ones who are recovering.
It's been one big nightmare, really. I mean, never thought something like this would happen to us. Maybe only in a facility that had cats near each other.
Only 17 of the initial 37 cats remain at the sanctuary, while Nico, an African serval, is in critical condition. The sanctuary is under quarantine and closed from the public to prevent any further spread of the bird flu. The disease spread rapidly, and Matthews doesn't know how the flu entered their facility.
Initially, we thought it was for bird droppings from waterfowl. We are in a flight pattern for migratory birds, so I don't know if that's part of the equation or not. So we really don't know at this time if it was food related or not.
The viral disease carried by birds can spread through bird-to-bird contact and can infect other mammals that eat birds or bird droppings. Cats are very vulnerable and symptoms happen fast, causing death within days. Dr. Dean Blumberg, an infectious disease expert at UC Davis, explains how this virus can spread and possibly mutate.
Although we don't know exactly how it got there, it just makes sense that it's likely due to migratory birds because we know bird flu is transmitted through the migratory bird population. The virus may mutate and become more easily transmitted person to person. So the more this virus circulates and specifically co-circulates with human strains, that's going to increase the odds of the virus evolving to more human-to-human transmission. And that of course, could signal another pandemic.
Staff at Wildfires are taking necessary precaution to disinfect the habitat while also protecting themselves from getting sick. They wear personal protective equipment and take foot baths when they enter and leave the facility. This is Analia Vey with GSUTV. Giant pandas Bao Li and Qing Bao make their debut at the Smithsonian National Zoo on January 24, 2025. Starting their 10-year stay, these two giant pandas arrived at the Smithsonian National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute on October 15th, following the last panda pair who returned to China in November 2023. The well-known panda exhibit is part of the more than 50-year-old diplomatic and scientific cooperation with China.
The bond between our two peoples and pandas started over half a century ago, even earlier than the establishment of China-U.S. diplomatic relations.
We have been working with our colleagues in China, this incredible kind of like scientist to scientist, people to people, collaboration, cooperation.
Starting in 1972, the very first pandas, Ling Ling and Sing Sing, arrived at the National Zoo, beginning the conservation pact that has helped to bring pandas back from the endangered list.
Through the work that we've done, giant pandas have been uplisted from the endangered list to the threatened list.
The newest pandas, Bao Li and Qing Bao, had about 3 months to acclimate to their habitat, in which they developed distinct personalities, zoo officials say.
Qing Bao, she's our female, and she is, I'll say, a little more independent. She kind of likes to do her own thing. Bao Li definitely loves people. He loves his keepers. He talks to them all the time.
Officials say 95% of visitors come to see the pandas, and since the last set of pandas left, the National Zoo saw a 20% drop in overall visitors.
I'm really excited that they're back, and I had to see them on the first day.
It's so exciting that they're back at the zoo, and I'm just here to support them.
The Smithsonian National Zoo is the only place in the country to see giant pandas for free. To celebrate, the zoo has merchandise, special events, and nearby establishments that join in on the fun through their own activities, themes, and support. This is Analia Vey with GSUTV. Friday, January 10th, a pickup truck crashed into a thrift store in Manchester, New Hampshire. Owner of Hidden Treasure Thrift and Discount on 575 South Willow Street says he thought he put his car in reverse, which led to his accidental acceleration into the front of the building. A witness who was inside a neighboring business at the time of the crash, around 9 p.m., said he thought the loud bang was an earthquake.
I honestly thought the building was coming down. It felt like an earthquake, and kind of was like, feel something normal, and decided to come outside and check it out. When I came out, the owner of the truck was getting out of the truck, obviously made sure that he was okay.
The owner reported he is okay and there was nobody inside the building when he crashed. This is Analia Vey reporting for GSUTV.
After over 15 months of relentless attacks in Gaza, Israel has agreed to a ceasefire with Hamas to allow for an exchange of hostages and to allow Palestinians to return to the northern regions of the territory. However, even after the first waves of hostages have been released on both sides, Israel threatens the tumultuous peace by continuing to attack Palestine. The ceasefire deal, which was moderated by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, was accepted by both Palestinian and Israeli officials on Wednesday, January 15th, and went into effect later that Sunday, January 19th. Within the first 2 weeks of the agreement, 7 Israeli hostages were released, and almost 300 Palestinian hostages were released in multiple trades that occurred in that time period. On top of that, substantial humanitarian aid was able to reach the people of Gaza for the first time in months. While Israelis wept and cheered at the return of their hostages, the scene on the West Bank was more somber, as the Israeli military threatened the Palestinian public that celebration would be punished. But even the threat of military violence could not discourage the populace from cheering and embracing their newly freed hostages, most of whom were women and children under 18 years old. On January 27th, over 500,000 Palestinians began returning to northern Gaza. While many had been hoping and fighting for a chance to return, there was unfortunately not much to return to after 15 months of bombardment from Israeli forces. The majority of northern Gaza had been leveled by sustained airstrikes and other ballistic attacks, with entire blocks reduced to rubble, and most infrastructure being severely damaged if not completely destroyed. Despite the celebration on both sides and the so far successful execution of Phase 1 of the ceasefire, the peace is still just barely holding. Israel has killed multiple Palestinians since the ceasefire went into effect on January 19th and injured dozens more, but has appeared to face no consequences for such action. On top of that, the Israeli government is working to ban UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, from operating in Gaza. If put into place, the ban would limit the recuperation and rebuilding efforts currently taking place in Palestine. For GSUTV, this is Graham Taylor. Welcome to Hollywood Buzz, your source for the latest in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Graham Taylor, and today we'll be looking at upcoming releases, celebrity news, and the latest from Hollywood. Let's get started. The 97th Academy Awards are right around the corner, and the list of nominees has been released. Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and Wicked all earned themselves over 10 nominations each. While the LA wildfires delayed the voting for the awards, the ceremony itself will still be held on March 2nd at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. A charity concert, Fire Aid, was held to benefit those who were victim to the multiple fires burning on the West Coast early this January. Lady Gaga, Green Day, and Billie Eilish were some of the headliners for the show, which took place on January 30th. Visionary director and musician David Lynch passed away on January 15th. The groundbreaking filmmaker behind many experimental and influential works, such as Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and Twin Peaks, had still been hard at work on various projects and had no immediate plans to retire. He died 5 days before his 79th birthday. Nintendo announced the Nintendo Switch 2, the follow-up to their popular handheld hybrid console. The console is set to release later this year, with a full press conference for the device scheduled for April 2nd. And we'll go over the new features and specifications of the newest addition to the Nintendo family. Will Smith announced his first new album since 2005. The ambitious new project, titled Based on a True Story, will be releasing in parts over the next year, with the first part releasing this spring. A single from the album featuring Big Sean, named Beautiful Scars, was released on January 30th. For GSU TV, this has been Graham Taylor with the latest Hollywood Buzz.